Hey everyone, and welcome to our deep dive this time on SHAKTI Pumps. They're an Indian company making waves in the solar pump market. Have you heard of them?
Yeah, they've been around for a while, actually, since 1982. But they've really taken off just recently.
Yeah, that's exactly what we're going to figure out today. We've got a bunch of their conference call transcripts and investor presentations, covering the last few quarters. So let's see what they're doing and where all this growth is coming from. And if the solar wave they're on has any staying power.
So their focus on solar pumps, that's a big factor. And they've definitely been riding the wave of government initiatives, things like the PM-KUSYM scheme.
Okay, wait. For those of us who don't know all the government lingo, what exactly is the QSUM scheme?
So basically, it's India's push to get solar-powered irrigation pumps to farmers. It has three parts: setting up new off-grid solar pumps, replacing old diesel pumps, and even solarizing the pumps that are connected to the grid already. It's a pretty ambitious plan.
And SHAKTI Pumps is right in the middle of it, right? I mean, they've gotten a pretty big piece of that market.
Oh yeah, for sure. We're talking like 26% market share. That's over 81,000 pumps just since April 2024.
Wow. No wonder they've seen their revenue going way up. They had like a 233.6% year-on-year increase last quarter.
Yeah. And they're projecting 25% to 30% growth this year. Building on what they did last year, they hit a revenue of 5,370 crores. They're keeping this momentum going.
Okay, but is this all just because of these government schemes? Or is there more to this story?
Yeah, they're definitely taking advantage of it, but they're also making some pretty smart moves, like their order book. It's huge. Orders 2,000 crores to be executed in the next 15 months, including big orders from different states under the QSYM scheme.
Those government contracts are definitely a big deal for them. But what about their own innovations? Haven't they been investing in research and development too?
Oh, absolutely. Remember those 13 patents? They're always coming up with more efficient pump designs. Like, they even got a patent for this new impeller seal that makes the pumps even more efficient.
Okay, that's pretty cool. I can see that being really important for farmers who want to save on energy costs. So they're making good business decisions and innovating. What else?
Well, they're also the only company in India that manufactures everything for solar pumps in-house. Pumps, motors, controllers, even the mounting structures. They do it all. That kind of control over everything means they can keep quality high and costs low.
So they're not messing around with different suppliers. They have their own facilities to make sure they're putting out good quality pumps.
Exactly. And they're actually planning to double that production capacity for pumps, motors, inverters, and the mounting structures. They even raised Rs 200 crores through a QIP to fund this expansion. They're serious about keeping up with that growing demand.
Wow, they're going all in on this. So they've got government support, new products, and efficient manufacturing. But what about the farmers? Are they actually buying into this solar pump revolution?
That's where it gets really interesting. The farmers aren't just sitting back and taking handouts. They actually pay for part of the pumps. It's like 25% to 40% of the cost, depending on the state, and the government covers the rest. So SHAKTI Pumps is making connections with the people who are actually using the pumps.
So they're getting real feedback from the people using these pumps.
Exactly. And it seems like it's working. Their brand recognition is growing, and they're working on making their dealer network stronger, reaching out to those farmers directly.
Smart. They're not just relying on government contracts. They're building a customer base that will stay with them. But let's be real. Every business has challenges. What are some of the risks they need to watch out for?
Well, the big one is how much they rely on government schemes like QSYM. Those can always change, Budgets can get cut if the government pulls back its support. That could really hurt SHAKTI Pumps' growth.
That's a good point. Their investor presentations do show that government projects make up a lot of their revenue, like almost 69% last fiscal year.
Yeah. Another risk is competition. As this market keeps growing, more companies will see the opportunity. Some of them could be big companies with lots of money, and that could be a problem for SHAKTI Pumps' market share.
So they have a lot going for them, but they're not invincible. What about their diversification strategy? They're starting to get involved in the electric vehicle space. Is that a way to deal with some of these risks?
It could be. They're using their experience with energy-efficient motors to come up with EV solutions. They even set up a subsidiary just for that called SHAKTI EV Mobility Private Limited.
So they're not just a pump company anymore. They're becoming more of a broad energy solutions provider.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. And the timing is right. The world wants renewable energy, and the EV market is booming. It's a great opportunity for them to expand.
This makes me wonder, how serious are they about this EV business? Is it just a side project, or are they going all in?
Well, they already invested Rs 32 crores into SHAKTI EV Mobility. And they're planning to double their production of motors and controllers for EVs. That sounds pretty serious to me.
That's interesting. It'll be cool to see how this EV thing works out. Could be their next big thing, right?
Could be. It's definitely worth watching. The EV market is still pretty new, especially in India, so there's a huge opportunity for Shakti Pumps to be a major player. But let's leave the EV stuff for now and get back to their core financials.
Okay, so we've got this company doing really well with solar, but with some potential problems to watch out for. What's next?
Let's dive into those numbers. They're definitely growing fast, but is it sustainable? Are those profit margins going to stay high? That's what we'll be looking at next time.
Welcome back to our look at Shakti Pumps. So last time we were going to dive into their financials. We saw some great revenue numbers, but let's see if they're actually making some good profit from all those solar pumps.
Okay, let's talk about the money. Revenue's great and all, but are they making a decent profit from all these solar pumps?
Well, their profits have definitely been going up. In the first quarter of this year, their EBITDA margin was 23.9%. That's a huge jump from 7% in the same period last year. Okay, hold on. Some of us aren't exactly financial experts. Can you break down what EBITDA margin actually means?
Sure. Basically, it shows how much profit they're making from their core operations before you factor in things like interest and taxes and all that. So it gives you a good idea of how well they're running the business.
So a higher EBITDA margin means they're getting more profit from each sale. That's a good thing, right?
Yeah, definitely. And it's not just a one-time thing.
Right.
Their EBITDA margin for all of last year was a healthy 16.4%, much better than the 6.9% from the year before.
So yeah, things are looking up. But you mentioned before that some of this could be because of things outside their control, like lower raw material costs.
Yeah.
So how much of their profit is because they're doing things well, and how much is just good luck?
That's the big question, isn't it? Those external factors have definitely helped. But their vertical integration strategy has been really important too. By making most of their components in-house, they can keep their costs down, which helps protect them when raw material prices go up and down.
That's smart, like a safety net for their profits. They're not totally dependent on what's happening in the global market, but profitability is just one part of the story. What about their cash flow? Are they actually making money from all those sales? Or are they spending all their cash just to grow?
That's really important. A business can look good on paper, but if they're not bringing in cash, they're going to have problems. Luckily, Shakti Pumps has been making positive cash flow from operations lately, so they're not having to rely on outside funding to grow. It gives them more flexibility and protects them from things like rising interest rates.
Now they're making profit, they're generating cash, and they have a huge order book. Sounds like they're in a pretty good place financially. But you know what they say? If it sounds too good to be true.
You're right to be a little skeptical. There are always challenges, even for companies that seem to have it all figured out. One thing Shakti Pumps needs to be careful about is their working capital.
Working capital. Can you explain that one?
Sure. Imagine you're running a lemonade stand. You need money to buy lemons, sugar cups. That's your working capital. You also need to make sure you have enough cash to pay for your expenses while you're waiting for people to pay you for that lemonade.
Okay, so for a company like Shakti Pumps, working capital is about managing the money they need to buy stuff, make the pumps, sell them, and then collect the payments.
Exactly. And as they grow, this becomes even more important. They need to invest more in inventory, manage their receivables, and make sure they have enough cash to cover those big government contracts, which can sometimes take a while to get paid.
It's a bit of a balancing act then. They need to grow, but they also need to be careful not to run out of cash.
Exactly. And as they expand to other countries, managing all that across different currencies adds another layer of complexity. But let's shift gears a little. We know they're doing well right now, but how much more can they grow?
That's a good question. Is this just a temporary bump, or is there a long-term story here?
Well, the government has set some pretty big targets for installing solar pumps. Remember, we talked about those 14 lakh off-grid and 35 lakh on-grid pumps they're planning under the COU scheme.
Those are big numbers. So even if they just keep their current market share, there's still a lot of potential growth just from COUS.
Right. And that's not even counting the broader market for solar pumps outside of government programs. As more people learn about them and the price of solar keeps going down, we could see demand explode from private farms and businesses. They're all looking for better ways to pump water.
Sounds like Shakti Pumps is sitting on a gold mine. But let's be realistic. Not every company that has a good start can keep it going. What kind of challenges might they face as they try to get bigger?
One challenge is finding the right people. As they expand, they're going to need more skilled engineers, technicians, and managers. To stay competitive, it's hard to find good people in the renewable energy sector, so they're going to have to offer good salaries and benefits and create a good work environment.
Makes sense. It's not just about factories and orders. It's about having the right team. What else might hold them back?
Well, managing their finances as they grow is going to be tricky. As they get more orders, they'll need more money to buy materials, manage inventory, and offer credit to customers. They'll need to be smart about how they use their cash and make sure they can handle those big government contracts, even if the payments are sometimes delayed.
That's definitely something to think about. Especially with those government contracts, they need to be on top of their finances to manage all that.
For sure. And we can't forget about technology. The renewable energy world is changing all the time. With new inventions coming out left and right, SHAKTI Pumps can't afford to fall behind. They need to keep investing in research and development so they can keep their products competitive.
So they need to be flexible and ready to adapt. Always looking for ways to improve and stay ahead of the game.
Exactly. And they can't lose sight of their customers. Farmers have different needs and face different problems. SHAKTI Pumps needs to make sure their products are not only good technically, but also meet the specific requirements of each farm.
So it's not just about selling pumps. It's about understanding what the customers need.
Right. That's why their dealer network and customer service are so important. They need to make sure their dealers are trained and knowledgeable, and that they can handle any problems the farmers have.
Sounds like SHAKTI Pumps is facing a classic problem. They have everything they need to succeed, but getting bigger and keeping that momentum going. That takes careful planning, smart decisions, and a lot of hard work.
Yeah, that's true. But if they can overcome those challenges, the rewards could be huge. They have a real chance to become a leader in the global solar pump market and play a big part in making agriculture more sustainable.
Okay, so we've talked about the opportunities, the challenges, the choices they need to make. But let's take a step back for a minute. What does their story tell us about the future of renewable energy? And what role are these innovative companies playing?
That's a great question. I think it shows a big change that's happening in the energy industry. For a long time, it was all about big power plants usually running on fossil fuels. But now things are shifting. We're seeing more decentralized energy, with renewable sources like solar and wind becoming more and more important.
And companies like SHAKTI Pumps are leading the way, helping people and communities make their own clean energy.
Exactly. And focusing on rural communities and agriculture is really important. Farming uses a lot of energy, and a lot of farms still use diesel pumps, which pollute the air and contribute to climate change. By giving farmers affordable solar pumps, SHAKTI Pumps is helping them save money and improve their lives, but they're also helping us move towards a cleaner and more sustainable energy future.
So they're making a real difference. It's good to know that even with all the problems in the world, there are companies out there working to make things better. But let's get back to business. We've talked about the company, but what about their stock? Is it a good investment?
That's what we're going to look at next. We'll go over their balance sheet, analyze their profits and cash flow, and see if they're worth adding to your portfolio.
All right, so welcome back to our deep dive into SHAKTI Pumps. Last time we were talking about how much they could grow and some of the challenges they might face. But now, let's get down to the nitty-gritty. Let's talk about their financials. Are they a good investment or what?
Well, that's the question, isn't it? We've seen how well they've been doing, but does that mean they're a smart investment? Let's find out.
Okay, so how do we figure that out? How do you know if a company is worth putting your money into?
There are a bunch of different ways to look at it. But let's focus on a couple of key things that investors look at. One is the price to earnings ratio, or PE ratio.
Okay, I've heard of that, but I'm not really sure what it means.
Well, it's basically comparing the company's stock price to its earnings per share. So it tells you how much investors are willing to pay for each rupee of profit the company makes.
Okay, so if a company has a high PE ratio, does that mean investors think it's going to grow a lot in the future?
Yeah, that's one way to look at it. A high PE ratio usually means investors think the company has a lot of potential to grow. Even if their current earnings aren't amazing, they're looking ahead to the future.
Gotcha. What about other things investors should look at?
Well, another important one is the price to book ratio, or PB ratio. It compares the company's market value to its book value, which is basically the value of all their stuff minus any debts they have.
So it's like comparing what the company's worth on the stock market to what their actual assets are worth.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
A high PB ratio means investors think the company is worth more than just its assets. They believe in its potential to grow.
Okay, so we've got these ratios. But how do we know what's a good number and what's a bad number?
Well, there's no magic number, unfortunately. What's a good PE or PB ratio depends on a lot of things. like the industry the company is in, how mature they are, and what the overall market is doing.
So it all depends on the context.
Exactly. And remember, valuation is just one piece of the puzzle. You also need to look at the company's management, their competition, and their overall strategy before you decide to invest.
Right. It's not just about crunching numbers.
Exactly. And speaking of the bigger picture, let's not forget about the global trends that are helping Shakti Pumps. The world is moving towards renewable energy, and there's a growing demand for sustainable solutions, especially in agriculture.
Yeah, and Shakti Pumps is in a great position to take advantage of that. They've got the technology, the manufacturing, and the market presence. They could really become a global leader.
They could, but they also have some risks, like we talked about. Their reliance on government programs, the possibility of more competition, and the challenges of expanding internationally. These are all things investors need to think about.
So there are pros and cons to waste.
Exactly. Investing is all about understanding the risks and the potential rewards, and then making smart decisions based on all the information you have. There are no guarantees. But Shakti Pumps is definitely an interesting opportunity.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground today. We've looked at how Shakti Pumps works, what drives their growth, their financials, and whether they're a good investment. I hope you've learned something about this company and the world of solar energy.
Me too. And regardless of whether you decide to invest in them, their story shows how innovative companies are helping us create a more sustainable future.
That's a great takeaway. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into Shakti Pumps. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep.